Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. I'm Frank Clark, and on behalf of my fellow board members, I want to thank you all for coming today. The purpose of this hearing is to comply with the school code provisions regarding our fiscal year 2019 budget. Madam Secretary, please state for the record the notice procedure for this hearing.
Thank you, Mr. President. Notice of this public hearing was published in the Chicago Sun-Times, a newspaper of general circulation in the city of Chicago, and posted at Boardroom, Principal Office, 42 West Madison Street Lobby on July 11, 2018. Notice was also posted on the cpsboe.org website on July 11, 2018. I will now read into the record the public notice as published. Notice public hearings, FY19 budget for the 2018-2019 fiscal year, Chicago Board of Education, commonly known as Chicago Public Schools. To whom it may concern, public notice is hereby given by the Chicago Board of Education that it has prepared a FY19 budget for the 2018-2019 fiscal year in tentative form, and that 5 copies thereof, available for public inspection, have been filed and are now on file in the Office of the Board of Education of the City of Chicago, commonly known as Chicago Public Schools. 1 North Dearborn Street, Suite 950, Chicago, Illinois 60602, and available at www.cps.edu/budget, and that said Board of Education will hold 2 public hearings upon said budget on the 16th day of July 2018. First hearing, Chicago Public Schools Loop Office, 42 West Madison Street, Garden Level, Boardroom, Chicago, Illinois 60602. Hearing time 2:00 p.m. to 4:00 p.m. Registration 12:30 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. Second hearing, Chicago Public Schools Loop Office, 42 West Madison Street, Garden Level, Boardroom, Chicago, Illinois 60602. Hearing time 4:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Registration 3:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. Dated at Chicago, Illinois, July 6, 2018, Chicago Board of Education by Frank M. Clark, President. Attest Estella G. Beltran, Secretary. And Mr. President, I would also like to note for the record the members present here today. Board Member Garza, Vice President Guzman, Board Member Dr. Hines, Board Member Ward, Joseph Moriarty, General Counsel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we can begin with our budget presentation. Heather, I think you're up.
Good afternoon, President Clark, members of the board. We're going to start off in the budget hearing with a presentation on the overview of the FY19 financial overview. The budget for FY19 as proposed includes $5.98 billion in operational spending and revenues aligned to our CPS vision with a focus on supporting equity and access citywide. Our state revenue risk in FY19 is largely removed. This is proven through the FY18 and the passage of the FY19 state budget. The FY19 CPS budget is balanced for the second year in a row. Our fund balance has been restored and we're nearing the CPS fund balance targets. Our cash position is improved in FY18 and is projected to have additional improvement in FY19. And the market has clearly stated that CPS's overall financial position is improved by lowering our borrowing costs. This slide highlights our operating budget year-over-year comparison, showing the FY17, FY18, and FY19. You'll notice that the FY19 budget, operating budget of $5.9 billion, is a 5% increase over the FY18 funding level. Schools budgets. So to provide a little bit of information on our school budget, as you'll recall, we provided principals and school leaders with their budgets in April. This budget was a build on our record-setting academic progress and invested $3.1 billion in school-level funding for the 18-19 school year. This is an increase of more than $60 million compared to the current school year, so $60 million more in FY19 versus the FY18 budget. Resources in this process for the school budgets were allocated very deliberately to support both equity across all schools, as well as provide some targeted supports and increase access to programming in targeted schools. For example, the student-based budgeting, SBB funding increased by 2.5% over FY18. Schools in FY19 received the base budget of $4,397 per student, and then under the SBB formula, that base weight is weighted based on grade level in diverse learner LRE categories. Schools also receive discretionary funding through title federal funds, this is namely Title I and Title II, and state funds under supplemental aid. The supplemental aid in particular is allocated using a per-student formula that is needs-based. And in this area, too, we saw an increase to schools in FY19. The per-pupil allocation for supplemental aid in FY18 was $857 per student, and the FY19 allocation is $910. So in the aggregate, that's an increase of over $14 million going out in supplemental aid year over year. Overall, both on the budget and the overall operating side, the focus is really in investing in continued academic excellence. So what we're working to do is really announce some of our investments towards that end. And this slide and the next one will just provide some highlights of some of those major investments that you'll see in the FY19 proposed budget. The budget for 19 also includes a $1 billion capital spending, which is the district's largest single-year capital investment in more than 2 decades. For many of the students, this will mean new annexes and new classrooms, and for others, this may mean modernized school buildings that are safe and ready for the school year.
Can I stop you for a moment?
Of course.
I've talked to Arnie about this, but seeing him here, at every board meeting, people come to us from specific schools and specific communities with their requests and their needs for capital improvements. This is huge over any budget I've seen since I've been here in terms of for our capital investments. I doubt, though, that Arnie allows us to hit everything on everyone's list. Nevertheless, this, I assume, will make a huge difference for many schools.
That's correct, President Clark. Obviously, with $1 billion, managed across a number of our priorities, deferred maintenance, academic priorities, equity and access, such as the expansion of those classical schools that are 6th through 8th, as well as some of the other investments, including the high school labs, as well as our one-to-one. We weren't able to solve for everything, but we were able to make major investments in a number of key areas in a way that we haven't in the past few years.
Additionally, we're looking at the first phase of a 3-year, $75 million investment in high school science labs. CPS, as part of this budget, will be adding or upgrading or renovating high school science labs in FY19 to ensure students have access to a robust science and education that's aligned to the next generation science standards. We've budgeted $28 million for this initiative in FY19 and announced the first group of science lab renovations last week. An additional investment is $26 million will be allocated towards social workers and case managers to support students in high-need communities. $26 million will support an additional 160 social worker positions at 160 schools and 94 special education case managers in 78 schools during the 18-19 school year. And this helps to ensure students have equitable access to social emotional supports as well as special education support that they need both inside the building and outside of school. An additional investment is modern computing resources for all students. So to improve on our modern technology in schools throughout the city, the district is beginning a 4-year investment starting in FY19 that is $125 million to ensure all schools have devices and internet connectivity that will make them modern and allow students access to modern computing and technology. In FY19, the $50 million will support the district's highest need schools. CPS in these schools will provide new equipment to support the use of classroom technology for 12,500 students. An additional 40 schools will receive new devices through this, which will provide support for an additional approximately 22,000 additional students. And schools' wireless networks will be upgraded in 66 schools to provide increased capacity to make sure that they can actually access the online resources. Finally, we will be expanding free full-day pre-K. So the expansion of our pre-K full-day program next year will provide an additional 3,700 students access to this full-day programming. This is an additional 180 full-day classrooms for fall, and it will serve the families most in need, roughly 15,000 of the city's 4-year-olds. The next few slides will provide some overview snapshots of key facets of the budget. This slide provides an overview of the FY19 operating budget by category. The various categories for personnel and non-personnel items are highlighted. When you add the funding for charter tuition, which is how we primarily fund salary and benefits for charter schools, with the other cost allocations for teacher salaries, pensions, and employee costs, the total spent on personnel is roughly 78% of our overall operating budget. Of these positions, approximately 97% of the positions directly support schools. The largest section of the pie chart is the school-based employees, which are staff that are directly budgeted to schools. And then the yellow section is the citywide student support, which represents many of the operational support positions, lunchroom security, facilities, as well as clinical services for special education and other positions that are budgeted out of a citywide unit, but are in schools each and every day.
As I recall, we have close to 40,000, maybe even 41,000 employees. Is that correct? Because I'm adding up the numbers here, and it's short of that by a few thousand.
Yes. So this is this is taken from the file from the positions as the 19 budgets were put together, and so definitely can check on the variance there. But these numbers are based on the inputs for the 19 budget.
Mike, did you want to read?
Yeah, if I can jump in.
Yes.
This chart here represents the FTEs in the budget, whereas the number of employees might be closer to 41,000.
And thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Quick question on the full-day pre-K programs. Are those CPS school-based pre-K programs, community-based, or a combination thereof?
So the expansion that we are highlighting here is specifically the programming that is taking place within the CPS schools. However, the additional state increased funding does allow for augmentation and increase of the community-based programs as well.
Got it.
So the
Great.
classroom conversions are CPS classrooms, but there's also growth on the community side.
Great, perfect. Great.
Thank you. Slide 9 provides an overview of our required contributions to the Chicago Teacher Pension Fund. And the highlight here is you'll see that our pension obligation continues to grow in FY19, up to $809 million, up from the $784 million in FY18. The gray bars at the bottom represent the state contribution to cover the normal costs that we incur each year for the teacher's pension.
Can you go back to that
Sure.
slide, please? The state's contribution obviously took a huge jump from 2017 to 18. Legislation in Springfield and the long battle to get equitable funding for CPS has finally had an impact. So you see the state's piece making a huge leap, staying relatively flat with some incremental increases in the out years. The overall net CPS payment, which you see, I think this is a chart that many people, I shouldn't say most, may not be familiar with, or may not even understand. But this is, our pension obligation is enormous. It's the second biggest obligation we have, a teacher's salary being the first one.
Correct.
How much of this, particularly as you see the trend line continuing to go up by 30 and usually around 30 million year over year, how much of that is attributable to those pension holidays that occurred many years ago, where we got legislation literally to not make the full contribution?
President Clark, I can answer that. So based on our actuaries' analysis a few years ago, it was roughly about 30% may have been pension holidays. Another 30% was the return from the pension fund.
Okay.
And the one thing about that chart, also remember that the property taxes, the actual contribution of our operating budget will decline over the years because as our property taxes increase.
Yes, I think, and thank you for that clarification. I think what's important here is just that the trajectory is not quite like this, but it's pretty sharp, trending upward. It's just a reality, and we have to be prepared to manage it. But the pension obligation will only grow and grow significantly. All right.
Staying with the pension piece here as well, slide 10 shows the state per pupil contribution and the disparity of the pension funds that we have here. So despite the increase in the state's contribution that you pointed out, President Clark, on slide 9, there is still a wide disparity when you compare CPS to other districts throughout the state in terms of pension funding. The FY19 capital budget. So this slide provides an overview of the proposed $989 billion capital budget and the major categories of spend there. For FY19, our capital budget totals $989 million in investments in long-term district priorities. These are improvements to make sure that every high school in the city offers a state-of-the-art access to science lab and that there's district-wide access to digital learning tools, some of the pieces that we talked about in the investment highlights slide earlier. The FY19 budget builds significantly onto the $136 million in investments that were made during FY18, and this proposed plan is the largest single-year capital plan since 1998. The funds will be used to support schools throughout the city, and the chart shows the rundown of the full 989, but primarily there's funding in 5 categories: critical facility needs, overcrowding relief, educational programs, site improvements, and then IT and security upgrades.
In the past, community organizations, community leaders, and others, including CPS employees, teachers, and other organizations have raised issues regarding the allocation. I'm just focusing now on the capital dollars across the city, with a particular emphasis that some segments, primarily the west and south side, were getting a disproportionate negative share of the improvements. This is a huge budget compared to anything we've done, let's just say, since 1998. How do you feel that issue has been addressed? I know the answer. I just want the public to hear it.
Sure.
I think
Ernie?
Ernie should weigh in on that.
President Clark, aside from some of the overcrowding relief, which obviously is a big bucket of funding that's allocated for schools and communities where we're seeing significant demographic increases, when we took a look at the facility needs, the one-to-one, some of these other site improvements, things of that nature, we were very intentional to make sure that we were distributing the funding equitably. When we take a look at our deferred maintenance and certainly our critical need, when we're talking about $1.8 billion of critical need, the fact of the matter is those are all projects that are of the highest need and of the highest areas to address. So we made sure taking a look at how we're equitably distributing that funding to really make sure that we were making investments in areas that historically have not seen the level of investments that people in the community have had. Another example is the science labs. In this year's budget, it's $28 million going to primarily high or low income minority communities. When we took a look at the one-to-one, same thing. We made sure to take a look at things through the lens of equity and access, with the exception of the overcrowding relief, which is an outlier. In the other buckets, we made sure to take a look at it through that lens.
Arnie, I take from your answer, if I were to paraphrase everything I heard, the fact is we're spending we have a significantly more amount on capital dollars available than we've had in almost 20 years, number one. But those dollars are being allocated to the best of our ability to prioritize areas across the city, frankly, with a great deal of focus on some local schools that in the past had legitimate reasons to feel that they were not being prioritized as they should. Even with $1 billion, you can't correct all of that in one fell swoop. I don't want anyone that's listening to think that every problem's been resolved. But at least as I understand this budget and based on what you just said, it is a clear very, very intense focus to make sure that these dollars are distributed as equitably as we know how. Okay.
Funding for this FY19 capital expenditures to be spent in FY19 is already included in the budget. And the last slide will give us a little bit of an overview of the funding strategy for that capital plan. So the FY19 finance plan would cover capital expenditures projected through the majority of 2020, and the remaining 305 of FY19 capital plan would be funded in 2020. And so what this means for the 989 that you see before you is that we essentially in FY19 will only issue the bonds for what we think will be spent in this fiscal year. So we issued previously the 189 million in bonds. Then we expect to issue 400 million this year. This would be the 290 that you see in the general obligation bonds there, as well as the 105 for the CIT bonds, and those bonds will not impact the operating budget.
Okay.
Thank you.
That concludes your presentation. Board members, do you have any other questions? Go ahead.
President Clark, I just have two comments to make. One is, through the briefings, thank you for going over this with me, and to the team for their additional time in going over this with me. I just want to make a comment that's something kind of dear to my heart, and Arnie, you're the one who brought it up to me just now, and it was the expansion of the classical schools to 6th or 8th grade. I think it's a great idea, and it educationally sound from my point of view, one that I've been cheering for a while. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So let's proceed with today's public comment segment. Madam Secretary, please share the rules for public comment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I go into the rules for the public comment, I'd like to also acknowledge that Dr. Janice Jackson, Chief Executive Officer, and LaTanya McDade, Chief Education Officer, has joined the hearing. For the record, I'd like to note that the registration for the public hearing was held between the hours of 12:30 p.m. and 1:30 p.m. Individuals who register to speak will have 2 minutes to comment, and I will call speakers in the order of registration. This hearing will conclude after the last person has signed in to speak has spoken, or at 4 o'clock, whichever occurs first. When called, please state your name. I'll proceed by calling the first speaker, number 1, Wilma Pittman. As Wilma approaches the podium, please, number 2, Elias Estrada, number 3, Patrick Harrigan, and number 4, Jennifer Biggs, please line up.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Wilma Pittman, and I am the proud grandparent of McCutcheon Elementary School. I have 3 grandchildren attending McCutcheon, and one that is currently in 1st grade. I am also on the LSC, the PAC, and volunteer weekly. I am interested in the school and all it has done for myself, my family, and community. McCutcheon is a level 1 school that is remarkable rated as we have one of the highest mobility rate in the city, sitting at 30%. It used to be 60% before ISBE changed the calculation. 20% of our students are STL, 30% of our students are in English, are English learner, and 93% of our students are now living below the poverty line. Despite these barriers, our students are achieving at a higher level and overcoming the odds. We are proud of the work our staff and students put in to ensure this happen. I came here today to express how thankful I am for the new gym our school has been granted. Dr. Gwen Cram, our principal, has been working tirelessly to secure a gym for our student and community. For several years, we are thrilled for the first time in our school history, we will have a place where our student, family, and community will have a place to attend PE, play sports, watch assembly, put on a play, and have a place to hold our graduation, and many other events. The new gymnasium will open up a world of opportunity for our students. We currently have a strong Special Olympic program and athletic program. These programs are only able to practice 1 to 2 times per week. With this new gym, our program be able to run daily. In addition, the limited space, several students in wheelchair could not access PE class at the gym we rent in a basement, and there is no elevator. This gym will provide access to high-quality programs to every student in our school. Due to your
Ms. Pittman?
commitment.
Ms. Pittman, can you please conclude?
Oh, where's she at?
Right here.
How many minutes?
2 minutes and you're already 16 seconds over.
Oh, am I? Okay, well then, you know what? I would like to thank the mayor, CEO Janice Jackson, Officer LaTanya McDay, President of the Board of Education Frank Clark, and the entire Chicago Public School Board for giving our students what they deserve for years. At McCutcheon, we are excellent. Excellent is the expectation. We are thankful we have this expectation. And again, I am very grateful, and thank you all for our new gym. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, any questions? Go ahead.
Before you leave, I have a comment. First, I want to thank you for all your service. You're on the LSC and the PAC, and you're very involved, obviously.
Yes.
And thank you for all that service and coming forward.
Thank you.
The second thing I want to say is I taught at McCutcheon years ago, and several decades. And I remember how small the school is. And I was there recently on a visit with the FUSE program and their innovation that they're doing in the science area. So
Okay.
thank you for coming forward and taking the time to say thank you. That was
You're welcome. We are very grateful, and you all are always invited. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, Arnie, that's one that you can put in the.
Next speaker, Elias Estrada.
Good afternoon. My name is Elias Estrada. I'm a product of the Chicago Public Schools. Attended at least 6 elementary schools before I found the school that really nurtured and drove me to be who I am today. Drummond School, Mr. Nee, the principal, and dear man in my heart, Mr. Peters, physical education teacher who decided to take me and my family to the right path. Anyhow, that said, I'm now a principal for one of the finest schools in Chicago, Alcott. And I want to start by thanking the board and thanking the district for the work that's been going on, at least for the last 2 or 3 years, in trying to be equitable. It is truly appreciated. Just received notice not too long ago that, in fact, Alcott's going to be receiving a full-time social worker, which is greatly needed, both at my elementary and at my high school. We also received notice that we're one of the schools that's been selected for that new science lab. Just recently at my elementary school, my 5th and 6th grade teacher was awarded the national, state, then national award for science. Got to go to the White House just this past week. So we're extremely proud of the work we do. That said, I'm here just to ask for some clarity, and it doesn't have to be today, but I want to develop an understanding of criteria, process as to the programs that in fact are being rolled out by the district, whether it's IB, whether it's STEM, whether it's new classical schools, whatever that may be, because Alcott is interested. If there's an RFP, if there's an application of sort, clear process is what I'm looking for. I'm not so sure that I have that. I am a lifer of CPS. I've never had any other job outside of the District of Chicago. So I'm looking for that, just to give some thought as you begin to develop. The last item on my list is I manage 2 schools.
Mr. Estrada, can you please conclude?
Managed 2 schools, took them over 6 years ago. When I started that school, both of those schools, each school received a foundation, desperately needed, close to almost $500,000, which now is being taken out of SPB. That being the case, and what we see now that we're turning that road, I'd like to see that foundation reinstated. So I'm formally asking that there be some thought as to that foundation coming back. That includes the counselor, that includes the clerk, that includes the assistant principal. 2 schools, 3.5 miles apart. We need that foundation. Thank you.
Have you brought this up to the attention of your network chief?
Lots of conversations have been had about that. Mr. Guzman has been at my school, as a matter of fact. Ms. Ward has been at my school. I've spoken to Dr. Hines as well. This has been an ongoing conversation, and I think at some point we need to take a look at those needs, because as of now, the way it's set up, it isn't just working.
Okay,
So we need to give some thought. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Number 3, Patrick Harrigan.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the board. I'm a parent of 3 little girls. 2 of them go to George B. Armstrong School of International Studies, which is 2 doors down from our house. We live in West Rogers Park in the 50th Ward. It's an incredibly diverse area. The school reflects the neighborhood. We have over 55 languages spoken by the families who go there, a large number of refugees. It's on the far north side, but I think its diversity reflects the city. We have kids from all over the world there. And we were just delighted to hear recently that after 10 years of kids scraping their knees playing on a broken asphalt parking lot, the school might finally be getting some funds to build a functional recreational facility for the more than 1,300 students who go there. Everyone in the neighborhood is very excited about the school. Instead of sending their kids to Catholic school or private school, I think more and more families are investing in the school, as we have. My wife is a member of the LSC and the PTA. Many parents are more active than they ever have been, and I think this is a step in the right direction, and I just wanted to say thanks. So, thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
I would like to just make a comment. I'm one of your neighbors. I live in West Rogers Park, and I would like to make arrangements so I can go and visit.
Excellent, and we'd love to have you, so
Thank you.
thank you.
Number 4, Jennifer Biggs.
Good afternoon. Jenny Biggs, CPS parent, raise your hand. There are a few things in this budget to be pleased with. Budgets came out on time, and we're relieved that schools finally had enough time to plan. There weren't massive cuts, as we've experienced for the past 6 years, which totaled more than $400 million to our district schools. The budget has a few things we are deeply concerned about. Critical clinician positions keep kids safe, healthy, and in the best place possible so they can reach their academic and human potential. Many of these positions have been gutted and are at disgustingly low ratios. We have 2 examples. The recommended ratio for social workers to students not in high poverty is 1 to 250. Students living in high poverty or with trauma, which is our district, need even more social workers than this ratio. The CPS ratio is 1 to 1,200. Your announcement this morning is a start, but we have a long way to go, and this has a feeling of a PR move to us. CPS only has 229 school psychologists. There's no change from last year. That ratio is 1 to 1620. Special education support staff has also been gutted. There are 119 OTs in the district. While they might be in a building once a week, they have to attend IEP meetings and often don't see students ever. This is a concern brought over and over to us from parents in recent months. Another concerning number, 123 librarians for the whole district. Budgets are a set of priorities. This budget, like many budgets past, informs the public that you don't value the social emotional needs of Chicago students, many who are living in concentrated poverty with high levels of trauma. One line we noticed in the budget book is that you expect $22 million in TIF surplus this year, when there was $88 million surplus last year. Get the mayor, who is in charge of the schools, to up that amount and fund more of these critical positions now so the kids of Chicago can have the supports to thrive. CPS needs at minimum 1,000 more social workers to meet the better than 1 to 250 ratio. In the wake of the CPS sexual abuse scandal, we say put more social workers and school psychologists in the schools now so that students have a place to deal with the stress and trauma they are facing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, number 6, Latasha Whitehead.
Good afternoon, Board President, Mr. Clark, Vice President, Mr. Guzman, esteemed members, Ms. Garza, Dr. Hines, Ms. Ward, Chief McDade, Dr. Jackson, and Mr. Moriarty. morning. My name is Latasha Whitehead, and I am the local school council president of Arthur Ashe Elementary School and also PAC chair. Thank you for allocating resources to the southwest side of Chicago and especially the Arthur Ashe Elementary School and community. Our school is in need of capital improvements such as new security cameras, brighter lights, fresh paint, and a community garden, and in dire need of a new playground. To further discuss the need for a new playground, my principal, Mr. Clyde King, will read a letter that one of the third grade students wrote regarding a new playground. Mr. King.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Mr. King has not registered to speak.
Okay, yeah.
You can read the form.
Next, so.
I think he is number 7.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Well, then come right up. You know, what's that game show? Come on down.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, as my LSC president stated, I'm going to read a letter to you written by one of my students, and this was written in late May. My fourth quarter theme of the school was health and wellness. So it's very, I was happy when the student wrote the letter, so I'm going to read it as written. Dear Mr. King, recess is only 20 minutes a day. Me and my class is determined to get a funner playground. Remember, it's only a third grader. We think we have a wonderful idea and hope you'll agree. Our playground is boring. Recess is very important. It's a science fact that children need to play to release extra energy. It makes people focus more on their work. Just think about, for example, me, Jay Brady, and Jay Klinkscale. And those are some students that had challenges in their classroom. You can spice it up a bit. You can get 4 swings, a seesaw, merry-go-round, a tunnel slide, thick rope, a ball, and unlock the zip line. Kids depend on having a fun place to play after working. Sincerely, Denia Abrams. P.S. I'm collecting signatures. And she went around and not only collected signatures from her third grade peers, but she went all the way up to the 8th graders. And she collected 153 signatures. So I do have copies for you if you want to look at that. So I just wanted you to know that we're greatly appreciative for the allocation of the resources. And although we haven't received anything, this is my plea for the board to allocate additional funds to Arthur Ashe, because as from the mouth of a student, she recognized the need for improvement with the playground, just to run off extra energy, just to know that they need a safer environment to be able to play. So again, my request is that additional funds are allocated to support the students at Arthur Ashe.
Thank you. I saw you making notes, Arnie.
President Clark, could I say something?
Yes.
Excuse me. I just wanted to say, number one, commend you on the young lady, what you're teaching over there, that she has become an activist already and can write so well. But I do know when I was at Hendricks, we didn't have a playground. I never thought of coming to the board. I probably should have. I went to my alderman, and he put it up.
Okay, well, I've had meetings with my alderman.
I'm just saying, I didn't know if you had, but I did, and the alderman got it done, so I would stay on him, too. I wouldn't say give up on us. I didn't know at that time to come to the board to ask.
Okay.
No, I didn't.
Well, when I received the email that, you know, we were receiving additional funds, I thought this was probably the best place to come.
I think it's great, but go to him, too.
Okay.
Okay. 'Cause that's
Number 8, Diane Martin.
Good afternoon. My name is Diane Martin. I'm a staff member at Arthur Ashe Elementary School, and I have been at Arthur Ashe for over 10 years. I love the school, I love the students, I love the area. And I'm here to talk about maybe we can upgrade our baseball field. It's a nice field, but it could be better. It's all concrete, and the students tend to fall when we play. We would just like to get it upgraded so that maybe we can also introduce them to soccer and tennis or maybe some other sports. So it's not just basketball all the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We also have another speaker that is registered to speak after this list was printed. Number 9, Pavlin Jankov.
Good afternoon. Pavlin Jankov with the Chicago Teachers Union. I wanted to speak about some issues around school funding and enrollment. So ending the 20th day layoffs does alleviate uncertainty at the start of the school year, but it doesn't alleviate the budget pain from enrollment decline. It pushes the pain to the end of the school year. So schools suffering declining enrollment under SBB will just face steeper budget cuts in the summer. According to ISB calculations, under the new state funding formula, CPS is still $2 billion away from adequately meeting student needs. Tying dollars to enrollment fluctuations in Chicago schools when you are nowhere close to meeting student needs is discriminatory, especially in a city where population change is tied to systematic racism and where South and West Side neighborhoods have been disinvested from. Just look at your own proposed capital budget this year, where you are doubling down on segregation in many neighborhoods on the north sides by disproportionately funding expansion. Even the state's formulas has changed to consider needs rather than enrollment changes to distribute funding. CPS should end its discriminatory funding model immediately. To fund such a change, this board needs to become advocates instead of a rubber stamp for the mayor. You can start by pushing for commitment on a real TIF surplus from the city. As mentioned before, $20 million does not even pass a smell test. We know about the neighborhoods on the near west sides where some of these TIFs exist, and even just a couple TIFs are increasing by $20 million over the last couple years. There's plenty more money available. And push the city for new revenue sources to fill the needs gap starting now. This is as true in 2015 as it is now. Waiting 20 years for the state to ramp up funding is not a solution. The mayor is fond of saying that the children can't wait, but only when pushing reform he or his funders prefer. This board waited years for state funding reform to pass, and what happened during those years? The board chose to balance the budget in the backs of vulnerable populations, systematically discriminating against students with special needs. So end SBB, stop reinforcing the segregation and disinvestment cycles in the city, and come up with a plan to fully fund the needs of our students today, not 20 years from now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is that the
Mr. President, this concludes the public comment section.
board members, or any questions, any follow-up questions? Well, then this concludes our budget hearing. Thank you very much, everyone.